On a Sunday night, a woman came in off the streets and came down through the center aisle and sat on the left-hand side. He finishes preaching and makes an invitation, and that lady gets up out of that seat and comes to the front and gives her life to Jesus. Over the course of the next few days, he has the opportunity to baptize that lady. You know who that lady was? That lady was his mother. The story that you didn't hear was when he was 10 years old, he took a gun because he couldn't stand life anymore. And he said, all I can remember is the click, click, click. No one told me that a gun had a safety. And I kept going click, 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 and I couldn't kill myself. He said, now take that and hold that for a second, because when my son turned 10 years old, we were on Air Force One having M&Ms at the presidential dining table. My son had a presidential coat on that said guest of the president, and we sat and had birthday dinner with the president of the United States. Ron Archer is coming, and part of the reason why we're getting him, his son is stationed at Joint Base and is here for 3 years. So he said, I need to come see my son anyway, so I'm just going to come and spend a weekend with you. I'm like, I don't care how it happens, but We've had lots of conversations over the last 3 weeks, getting ready for this morning's message on fearless living. Overcoming the fear of family with a tagline. It's really all about the words that rattle in your head. You know the words I'm talking about. Bishop said, the words that formed my existence became the words that launched my life. They couldn't shut me down, keep me back, hold me back, shut me up, or lock me out, because I was convinced of my greatness because of 2,000 verses that I put in my heart. The fear of family, the words that rattle in our heads. Now, this is not the typical Mother's Day message, everybody. So I'm going to begin with a story. There was a little boy who needed to sell one of those old push lawnmowers that have the choke and the start and the pull and the rope. Some of you know what I'm talking about. None of these electric starts or sit down, and it went because you pushed it, and thank God that there was a mower to at least do something besides the old reel-to-reel that you used to have. There was a preacher that came by from the neighborhood. He decided he wanted to buy it, so he said, little boy, does this thing really work? And the little boy said, absolutely. Are you sure? Yes, sir. All you got to do is just pull the rope. He pulled and he pulled and he pulled and he pulled and he pulled. He finally said, son, this thing doesn't work. The little boy says, because you haven't cussed. The preacher said, son, I'm a preacher. I think 18 years ago was the last time I cussed. Little boy said, keep pulling, it'll come back to you. For the last several weeks, we have been dealing with a verse from the Psalms that says, I cried to the Lord and he heard me. And when he heard me, he delivered me from a few. He delivered me from some. He delivered me from most. No, it's very specific in the Hebrew. He delivered me from all my fears. How many fears are there? 2,000. If you take all of the phobias, fears that are listed in the manuals of psychology, sociology, human understanding, 2,000 things that people are afraid of that we've named. Yet only 2 of them do you come out of the womb with. All the rest, 1,998, are fears that we learn. In the face of family, we learn to fear sometimes. There is a man in the Old Testament who becomes a great prophet. His name is Jeremiah. Let me read you a piece of his story. And these are the words of Jeremiah, who was the son of Hilkiah, one of the priests of Anathoth in the territory of Benjamin. Jeremiah chapter 1 is where I'm reading. And there's a litany of the years and the dates and the places, and it picks up again in chapter 1, verse 4. And the word of the Lord came to me, saying, before I formed you in the womb, I already knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to nations. Ah, sovereign Lord, I said, I do not know how to speak. I am only a child. Have you ever disqualified yourself because of what you had heard going on in your head? You stopped doing because you heard words in your head that said you couldn't possibly do that? The Lord said to me, do not say, I'm only a child. You must go to everyone I send you. Verse 8, I'm reading from NIV and then I'm going to break it down. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you and I will rescue you. The them is an interesting, it's not a them, it's a them because you see their face. It's because you can get close enough to see their dimples and their pimples and their rinks and their rolls, and you know how they got there most of the time, and you were the cause. When you see their face, have you ever become afraid of encountering somebody in your family because you could see their face, and when you saw their face, you heard their words? I told you, some of you, that I rewrote this message and rewrote this message and rewrote this message. And I got stuck coming in this morning because there's a little history that you need to know. Anybody in the Old Testament that you see that has a last name end in Aya, it means that they are related to the king. That's one. In the relationship to the king and what they have, it means that they're part of the royal family, but there's something lacking. And you know what's lacking? They weren't born in a direct bloodline to royalty. They weren't born in a direct bloodline to power. They were born in the family general. They would be like, any of you ever seen the movie King Ralph? Yeah, about 8 of you have. It's a story about the whole royal family getting wiped out because they're having a photo taken of the gathering of the royal family in England for the first time in decades. And when they do, the photographer puts the cord together and puts it over a pool of water. They've had a lightning storm, and they go to take the picture, and the water and the electricity gather together and electrocutes the entire royal family. So now they've got to find an heir to the throne. And they pick a guy who's a nightclub entertainer in Vegas. King Ralph. The setting of this verse is that Jeremiah, who we know today to be a great man of God, had an unusual past. The past is indisputable. It is not filled with a lot of joy. He is living close to royalty and close to power and close to everything with the inability to have it all. He's just an ayah. He's not the king. By the very ending of the name, we know it's royalty. But he is not, can I say it again? He is not the king. He is not the chief. He's a member, but he's not the leader. Am I describing anybody that sits in the house this morning? You're a part of something, but you're not the leader of something. You're a part of a family, but you're an outcast of the family. You're a part of the family, but you don't have it all. You were born to something, but you haven't been able to get all of it. God says to him, and to you, and to me, I knew you before. And who you are today is exactly who I designed you to be. I was there when you were conceived in all of its love and splendor or its tragedy and trauma. I was there. And you today are exactly who I designed you to be. So I want you, here's the Danny Thomas version of the whole morning. Get comfortable in your own skin. Get comfortable in who God designed you to be. Get comfortable in spite of the words that are rattling in your head. Because you need an antidote today. You need a new filter. I tell you on a regular basis. If you haven't heard it before, put your hands on your head. Put them up there. Everybody put your hands on your head. It's time to get rid of, say it with me, it's time to get rid of stinking thinking. It's the words that are rattling around. You know the kind of words I'm talking about? It's the words that are toxic. You need a filter. Growing up, we had a little bottle of brown stuff. And if you ever got sick, you were supposed to drink this little bottle of brown stuff. No, it wasn't castor oil. That was Saturday morning for another reason. Anybody remember what the brown bottle was? You can't get it anymore. You can't even buy it anymore. It was what? Epicac. Epicac is now found out you can't buy it. You can't have it. They don't want you to have it. Because in the regurgitating of what you swallowed that was poisonous, you may do more damage, especially if you did a chemical. So people used to get projectile. Some of you this morning need a cure, a filter, a new piece of charcoal put in you to get rid of the toxic words that you've heard. The words that you've heard that make you feel less than you are. Made you feel inferior. Guys, I'm kind of going through these really quick to get caught up. First slide up should be when you feel less than you are or made to feel inferior to anyone or anybody around you. The words that allow you to be made to feel like you're an outsider when you're living inside the house. When you are in a room full of family and you have the feeling that you are all alone. The antidote is to understand that Jesus is a friend of the lonely. And that Jesus is the one, when everyone else has turned you out or turned against you, because here's what he says to Jeremiah. When you face their faces, I will be with you. The problem that some of you have in this afternoon is you really don't want to go where you're going. You're going to make an appearance and you're going to show up and you're going to try to be nice, but you already know that there is already a toxic relationship. Either you caused it or you've been the recipient of it, and I'm not letting anybody off the hook. And when you get there, just by the very nature of you being there, you're kind of going, okay. And there's steam. And you wonder how you ever got born. There are going to be 6 million people that will enter the world of parenting this year. Now, thank God that everybody in this room was birthed. Or it'd be a lonely house. I read about a pediatrician this week, and there was the quote. It's maybe the quote of the week. Raising a child is like baking a cake. You don't realize until it's too late that you created it as a disaster. A little more somber, J.W. Whitehead says, children are the living letter that we send into the future that we will never see. One more that's even more profound. Nature is rather careless about whom it allows to become mamas and papas. The qualifications are not very high, you know. In fact, it is not necessary to know a single fact about children in order to produce one. And the result is we who are the offspring, which would be everybody in the room. We who are the offspring, we're the offspring of ill-prepared people to birth us. And in the process of their birthing us, they may have said some words that rattle still in your head. We hear words like, always wear fresh underwear. Never have an accident with, Or we hear words like, you're stupid, dumb. You're never going to be a success. You are nothing but a failure. Maybe some of you heard that you were a slob and you were fat. I have had a weight problem my entire life. Okay? I get it. I was made fun of from 2nd grade on. I was told regularly by my really good friends, Danny, you can't be in sports because you're fat. It seems like the things we remember the most about childhood days, our brains are geared to go to negative. We hear the negative, and the positive gets pushed aside. The positive gets so quickly forgotten. I don't know what words that you have heard that I haven't said. I don't know that anybody wants to be brave enough to say it, but you just hold on to it for a minute. Suppose you go to a grocery store and you see from time to time the grocery store is having inventory taken. The owner finds out that in the bottom of his meat case in the frozen food section, there is a package of hamburger that is overripe. It somehow got there and didn't get turned over, and it is sat and sat and sat. When I went down to help my dad clean out the refrigerator after Mom went home to heaven, especially in the freezer. Dad never was much of putting together or, how can I say this? Cleaning a freezer was never his thing. Mom was in the care facility just shy of 5 years. Stuffing things. Somehow the grocer has left that piece of hamburger set in the bottom of the freezer, and it just sat and sat and sat and sat and sat until now, though, even though it's frozen with fungus among us. What should he do with the package of meat? Get rid of it. I know that's what you think. He should not neglect it, because the result of that fungus among us piece of meat is it's going to infect everything that gets put into the case. It's going to be rotten and it's going to spoil everything. And you're going to come along as a customer, and if you don't know it, you'll buy it. And if you get it and you buy it and you get it home and you get sick, you got sick because there was fungus among us. If you knew about it, you'd walk out. How much did it take to destroy everything? Just one package. Less than 1% of the entire vocabulary that you possess has the ability to ruin everything else that you say. You could watch the 99% all the time, and 1% will slip out. You will remember, if you just pull hard enough, how to cuss. And your speech then will become toxic. You will have toxic words or toxic talk. Most of us don't realize the effect of what we heard and how it affects us. And we heard it and it was unintentional. We heard it and it was directly said to us. Proverbs 12 verse 18 says, "There is speech that pierces like a sword." Toxic. What is toxic? Toxic are the words that sting. Anybody ever had a toxic word spoken? Let me see your hand. It's a word that hurts. Anybody ever had a word? It's words that have crushed your spirit. It's words that leave people feeling hurt and even hopeless. Anybody? How am I doing? And who says those kinds of words? Well, anybody and everybody. But in particular, parents and spouses and relatives, employers to employees, employees to employers, your friends, other Christians, any adult, any child. And why do you do it? Part of the time, you didn't mean to do it at all. It just was a response. You did it because you were ignorant. You did it because you really meant to hurt the person. And who gets hurt? Fulton Buntain taught me a great lesson. He and I did our share of dual counseling together over the 7.5 years. And at times, Fulton would be dealing with one part of a family in chaos, and he would be in one set of the offices, and I'd be in another set, and we'd meet in the back stairwell with families in crisis doing triage, and we would switch, and he would go downstairs to the library, and I'd stay upstairs, and we'd keep the families apart. Here was Fulton's great line. Now listen. When the elephants fight, the grass always loses. Do I need to break that down for you? When toxic words are being spoken, and people are at war, and families are dissolving, it's not the moment of the two, it's the generations that follow that get destroyed. When the elephants fight, he would say, an ancient Indian proverb. You didn't mean to hurt. Popped out. We forgot what we said, but the people who heard them and received them never forget. Toxic. Toxic never helps. Toxic always destroys. The ability of life is in the tongue. There is a speech when spoken that cuts like a sword. Found a story this week of a Scotsman. He lived in the Highland village of northern Scotland. He had grown up in a town where there were the town gossips and vicious rumors destroyed family after family after family. Families would have their livelihoods destroyed and their jobs taken away. They would have their families fall apart, all because there was a moment of defeat and ruin. He got caught up and passed along a story of gossip about another family in town. Years later, he found out that the story that he had told was false. So he goes to his pastor and says, Pastor, I destroyed a man with my words. Pastor, please, I'm sorry. How can I be forgiven? So the wise old pastor said, well, it's not quite as simple as just saying I want to be forgiven. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to take this bag of feathers, and I want you to place a feather on the front doorpost or gate of every home in town. And then I want you to come back and see me after all of the feathers have been given away. The guy did it, came back and said, so now can I be forgiven? He said, no, now I want you to go gather up all of the feathers that you placed. And the guy said, I can't, the wind's been blowing. They're all over the countryside. He said, precisely what happens when you don't calculate your words. How about at dinner, saying it was a delicious meal, not we're having this again? How about to your child, I'm really proud of you. I'm so glad you did your best. A C again? Are you kidding? How about to the teacher? Thank you for all you do for my children. You got a hard job, and I applaud for the job you're doing. How about to people who work for you? That project you just completed, that was really good, thanks. And how about to a friend? Your friendship means the world to me. I want you to begin to identify toxic words. The Bible says a soft word will turn away wrath, but a grievous word will stir up anger. How about stop the name calling in your house? You have the ability today to identify and stop doing it. I'll get there in just a minute. You wouldn't dare today walk up to somebody and call them a racist Nazi. You wouldn't dare walk up to somebody and call them not gay but queer. You wouldn't dare walk up to somebody and say you're stupid and retarded. You wouldn't do a diatribe of ethnic slurs and think you could get away with it. Name calling focuses on the character of an individual rather than looking at the problem that you have. Stop name calling. How about stop the words that wear on your soul? The words like shut up. How about swear words and vulgar words? How about words that will take the heart out of people? How about the word, you disappoint me? I abandon you. I want a divorce. Leave my family. And those words that overstate the point, you know? Words like, you're never on time. You are always. Or the great one, you are just like your. Yeah. So today it's, you're just like your father. And a few weeks from now, you're just like your mother. The words that rub salt into the wounds of life. When you bring up old business, you bring up old mistakes, or you don't let the fight go, so you just want the fight to go on. I used to tell Polish jokes, everybody. I loved Polish jokes. I lived in the Midwest, and one day one of my friends who lived in Chicago said, Danny, I've listened to you tell Polish jokes since we were in college. I've never told you this, but I want you to know, I'm Polish. And when you say that, you're hurting me. I've never told a Polish joke. I tell a lot of jokes about the ites, you know, those Hittites and Jebusites, all of those ites in the Old Testament, because none of them are around that I can offend anymore. And the words that communicate personal disgust. I remember when you had a nice figure. I remember when you didn't have that stomach that sticks out. I remember when we had a really good family. Two colleges. Met year after year after year in football. One New York Tech and the other Rensselaer Polytechnical Institute. New York Tech this particular year defeated Rensselaer Poly 21-8. In the game, the only touchdown of Rensselaer was set up by a 63-yard pass play. On the play, it appeared to be a breakdown in the stellar defense of New York Tech. The next week, the coach was reviewing the films. The coach has a name, Marty Sanal. He noticed that the defensive back on the play, who was a freshman, John Smith, stood frozen in one spot while the receiver caught the ball and flew by him for the touchdown. He stops the tape and says, Smitty, why didn't you move? The freshman said, I couldn't. My contact lens had just popped out of my eye, and so I covered it with my foot. I was waiting for a moment that I could reach down and pick it up and put it back in my eye. And I knew if I left the spot, I would never have found that spot on the grass again, and my parents would have killed me for losing my contact. When you're in this thing called the game of life, and it's the big game, and you live with that much fear of the words that bounce around in your head, you have a problem. Ladies, I have struggled because this message is not a rah-rah, we're honoring women today. It's a message for everybody in the house. And I have a word for somebody, and I've written it. I'm going to close. Over the past 2 days, I have struggled to prepare the message because it wasn't typical and it wasn't yay moms. It was a message of here we are, generation to generation, and we are the product of the words that have been spoken to us and over us. This message is all about the next 90 seconds, so listen. There's at least one person here today that has allowed your past, the words that were spoken over you and the words that were spoken at you, the words that came to you because somebody was angry and the words that were said because somebody was fearful, and you've allowed them to define you. I did some research on the brain this week. The brain only processes information in a now kind of understanding. The Bible is really true, and it says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. It doesn't say so was he or so will he be. It's so is he, because the brain only processes in the now moment. You can't get to the somedays. Anybody got a someday? Someday I'm going to. Anybody ever had a someday? You can't get to the somedays unless you start today. You can't get to the someday I'm going to lose the weight. You can't do the someday I'm going to be a better person. You can't do the someday I'm going to stop doing. You can't go to, the brain will go to the past. But your past is not going to change your behavior, because that's how you got here. For some, you've used that excuse, someday, and your brain just shuts down. And as soon as it hears the word someday, it says to the rest of the body, you don't have to do it. Now, you can hide in the fog of a dysfunctioning brain and a dysfunctioning family and a paralyzing past. You can live in a moment that defined you, that was spoken in haste and in anger, and you can let those words that are rattling in your head paralyze you today. Or you can start seeing that you possess a gift of greatness. Early this morning, a friend of mine called and said, Danny, there is a gift of greatness, and I'm speaking it over you this morning. You have lived in the shadow of lots of people and done lots of things for lots of people, and you don't want to take credit for anything that anybody else has done that you allow them to do. And it's time that you stop, because God's going to open up a new day and a new door for your church, and you've got to speak words of greatness over your church starting today. So here we go. I got to get to Ephesians. I got to read it. Chapter 2. We are God's workmanship, created in Christ to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. He's going to release us this morning to greatness. We need to start talking Jesus talk. We need to start getting rid of the stinking thinking that's kept us away. We need to start saying with authority some I ams. We need to get the now time of God and God's word that is life-giving, because we're going to go someplace, but it needs to start. If you're thinking about tomorrow, I'm going to lose weight, then you need to start saying today I am healthy. So I need some of you to start saying, today I'm good. I know how bad you've been. And God knows better than me. I know where you've come from. You need to start telling your brain right now, I don't care what sin you've committed. I don't care where you were last night or who you were with or what you smoked this morning before you walked in. You need to start today saying, I am good. Get rid of I'm bad. You need to start saying not that you aren't poor anymore. I am wealthy. I don't care if you've got 22 cents or your bank account's $42,000 in the red. I am wealthy. Those of you that walked in and you've heard I'm dumb and stupid and ignorant and you can't and you, I am smart. Those of you that are decrepit and old and broken apart, I am whole. I am safe. I am healed. I am saved. I am blessed. I am a lover. I'm not a cheater. I am strong. I am not weak. I am faithful. I'm no longer an adulterer. See, God is giving you and me permission to live in some greatness, and it's His. Your rattling words have disqualified you and kept you down and held you in that state of paralysis. You need to get the word of freedom in you this morning instead of what you've heard in your heart and your soul and in your brain. You need to get that God thought that on Mother's Day, I am with you is what He said. I am with you when you face the faces of yesterday and you face the faces of today, and they have limited you. The faces of the family that would say, here's my antidote. Here's my charcoal. Here's my Epicac. The Lord God is with me, and He has released me to be a masterpiece. I am great because He is good and He is my God. To face the fear of a family, purpose in your heart that the Lord is with you wherever you go, and the pain of the moment will turn into the joy of the morning because I am with you. I'm done.